forces. First of all, by specifically mapping, zoning, and protecting at least 30% of the ocean by 2030, and at least 50%.
They thought it was buried forever. But Queen Elizabeth's most dangerous secret has just been ripped open, and nobody inside Buckingham Palace is safe. A hidden clause, locked away for years, has finally been unsealed. And what's inside has sent shockwaves through the entire royal family. Harry is furious. Meghan is devastated. And the monarchy will never be the same again. Because what Queen Elizabeth left behind wasn't just a message. It was a bombshell.
Influencing modest kind of instruction. So it's, or guidance rather than instruction. I don't think she believes too heavily in instruction. She believes in finding your own path, but with very good examples and guidance around you to support you.
One that has just blown apart everything Harry and Meghan thought they were entitled to inherit. And there is no going back. In recent days, sources close to the royal household have indicated that a private meeting took place at one of the royal residences. The gathering was not announced in advance. There were no press briefings scheduled around it, no official photographs taken, and no statements released to the media beforehand. What is known is that security at the location was noticeably heightened in the days leading up to Sherbo. It and that staff within the household were given unusually restricted information about the nature of the event. For an institution that runs on protocol and routine, those details alone suggested something out of the ordinary was underway. According to multiple individuals familiar with the situation, the meeting was called by Princess Anne. The invitations sent to those expected to attend were described by insiders as direct and private in tone. This was not framed as a casual family gathering or a routine seasonal meeting of the kind the royal family holds periodically. The purpose, as those briefed afterward have confirmed, was specific and serious. Among those seen arriving at the residence were King Charles III, Queen Camilla, and Prince William. Accounts from people present at the location describe a noticeably subdued atmosphere. There was minimal interaction between those arriving. Queen Camilla was described as composed. Prince William, according to staff present, appeared tense. King Charles kept largely to himself upon arrival, which those familiar with his manner noted was not unusual under stressful circumstances, but the setting made it more conspicuous. What caught even senior household staff off guard was the arrival of Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Sources confirm the couple were escorted through a rear entrance to the property. They did not arrive through the main gates, and their presence at the gathering had not been communicated to all staff in advance. Meghan was dressed in dark clothing and wearing sunglasses. Harry, according to those who observed his arrival, wore a cap pulled low. The discretion surrounding their entry pointed to a deliberate effort to keep their attendance out of public view, at least initially. What brought this particular group of people together, under these conditions, was not a shared calendar event or a family occasion. It was, according to sources close to the matter, the fulfillment of a private directive left by the late Queen Elizabeth II before her death in September 2022. Queen Elizabeth had, in the final period of her life, included within her personal estate arrangements a sealed clause. This was not a standard provision. It was described by those familiar with the details of her estate planning as a carefully considered and deliberately restricted document, one that was drafted to be opened only under specific conditions and only by a specific person. That person was Princess Anne. The clause had remained sealed and untouched for some time after the Queen's death. The decision about when or whether to open it rested entirely with Anne. The instruction from the Queen, according to sources who have been briefed on the matter, was clear. The clause was to be read aloud to the relevant members of the family only if and when circumstances reached a point where the stability of the monarchy or the integrity of its institutional legacy was considered to be under threat. Serious threat. It was not intended as a routine measure. It was a contingency, one the Queen apparently hoped would never need to be used. The fact that Anne convened this meeting and chose this moment to open the clause tells its own story. Those who know her well describe the Princess Royal as someone who does not act impulsively. She is widely regarded within royal circles as methodical, loyal to the institution above personal sentiment, and deeply committed to the values her mother represented. If she determined that the threshold had been reached, those around her take that judgment seriously. The clause was read aloud by Princess Anne in the presence of the assembled family members. Its precise contents have not been formally disclosed. The palace has not issued any public statement about the meeting or what was discussed within it. However, accounts from individuals who were briefed afterward paint a picture of a document with significant implications, particularly as it relates to the financial and institutional ties that remain, formally or informally, between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the British royal estate. Sources familiar with royal estate planning have noted that a provision of this nature, one carrying this level of secrecy and timed for a specific triggering moment, would almost certainly have been drafted with legal input and considerable forethought. The Queen was known to be meticulous in her personal and institutional responsibilities. Those who worked closely with her over the decades consistently described a woman who thought carefully about consequences, both immediate and long-term. The reaction inside the room, according to multiple accounts, was significant. Descriptions of the atmosphere following the reading suggest the contents landed with considerable force. Prince Harry, sources say, did not remain seated calmly through the process. He is reported to have risen from his seat before the reading was complete and to have spoken, loudly in objection. He reportedly questioned the legal standing of the clause and suggested that the meeting had been arranged with a predetermined outcome in mind. Those accounts describe his reaction as one of genuine shock combined with visible anger. Meghan, seated beside him, was described by witnesses as becoming visibly emotional as the reading continued. She did not leave the room immediately, but her distress was apparent to those present. Princess Anne, by all accounts, remained composed and firm throughout. She made clear to those present that she was not acting on her own initiative or at the direction of any current member of the family. She was, as she stated according to sources, fulfilling an instruction left to her directly by Queen Elizabeth II, and doing so only because the conditions for doing so had been met. King Charles said very little during the meeting. His silence was noted by multiple people present, and those familiar with his character suggest it reflected, not indifference, but the weight of what was happening. Prince William, according to witnesses, appeared uncomfortable and avoided direct eye contact with his brother during the most difficult moments of the reading. Following the conclusion of the meeting, the atmosphere deteriorated further. Security personnel were called to assist as tensions between the parties escalated in the moments after the formal reading ended. Harry and Meghan left the premises in a visibly distressed state. Both were escorted out by security staff. No formal statement was issued by the palace in the immediate aftermath, and that silence has continued in the days since. What the Queen included in that clause and what its practical consequences now mean for Harry, Meghan, and the broader royal family remains a matter of significant importance. To understand why she felt the need to prepare such a measure at all, and why Anne concluded that the time to act had finally come, it is necessary to go back to where the trouble between the Sussexes and the monarchy truly began. To understand the meeting that took place behind palace walls and the sealed clause that was read aloud inside it, you have to go back to the beginning of the rupture. Not the moment it became public, but the period before that, when the decisions being made privately were already pulling the royal family in directions that many within the institution feared could not be reversed. In January 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, published a statement on their personal website announcing their intention to step back from their roles as senior members of the royal family. The statement outlined their plan to divide their time between the United Kingdom and North America, and to work toward becoming financially independent. It was released without prior notice to the palace, and without coordination with the communications teams that would typically handle announcements of this nature. The Queen, King, Charles and Prince William were not given advance warning in the usual sense. By multiple accounts, the statement came as a shock. The manner of the announcement mattered as much as its content. Royal announcements of any significance are traditionally managed through established institutional channels. They go through press secretaries, they are coordinated with the relevant households, and they are timed and worded carefully. What Harry and Meghan produced and published directly to the public bypassed all of that. Within the palace, the response was one of considerable surprise and, in some quarters, alarm. The couple had not simply decided to take a step back. They had done so on their own terms, in their own words, and in their own time, and they had made it public before any agreement had been reached about what stepping back would actually mean. The weeks that followed involved urgent and difficult conversations at the highest levels of the family. Queen Elizabeth moved quickly to convene what became known publicly as the Sandringham Summit, a meeting held at her Norfolk estate that brought together the Queen, Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry to determine what the path forward would look like. Meghan participated by telephone from Canada, where she had already travelled with the couple's son, Archie. The outcome of those discussions was a formal agreement that carried significant consequences. Harry and Meghan would no longer carry out official royal duties on behalf of the Crown. They would lose their designation as working members of the royal family. Their use of the HRH style, while technically retained as a matter of legal standing, would not be used in any active public capacity. Access to public funding through the sovereign grant would end. In exchange, they would be free to pursue independent employment and commercial opportunities, something that working royals are not permitted to do. For the couple, the agreement represented a kind of freedom they felt they had been unable to find within the institution. For many within the palace, it represented something more complicated. The Sussexes had negotiated their exit, but the terms had been extracted under pressure rather than arrived at through mutual understanding. The goodwill that might have softened the outcome was already in short supply. Public reaction to the announcement and the subsequent agreement split sharply along lines that largely reflected existing attitudes toward the monarchy and toward Meghan in particular. A significant portion of the British public expressed sympathy toward Harry and Meghan, acknowledging the pressure they had been under and the particular difficulties Meghan had faced as a biracial American woman entering one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. Others viewed the departure as a deliberate and damaging rejection of duty, one that showed disregard for the Queen personally and for the institution she had devoted her life to. Sustaining, Harry and Meghan relocated to North America, initially to Canada and then to the United States, settling eventually in Montecito, California. They moved quickly to establish themselves outside of the royal framework. A significant content deal with Netflix was announced, later reported to be worth in the region of $100 million. A partnership with Spotify followed. They established the Archewell Foundation, a non-profit organization through which they said they intended to pursue charitable work. They purchased a substantial property in Montecito and began building what appeared, from the outside at least, to be a comfortable and stable life. Throughout this period, Queen Elizabeth maintained a position of public restraint. She did not criticize the couple openly. She did not give interviews about the situation or allow those close to her to do so on her behalf. The approach she took was one that those who knew her well recognized immediately. She processed difficulty privately and continued to perform her public duties without allowing personal pain to surface in any visible way. But those close to the Queen during this period have said consistently that she was not indifferent. She was, by multiple accounts, genuinely distressed by the rupture and by the public nature of it. She had enormous affection for Harry, who had been particularly close to her in the years following the death of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. The manner of the departure and the ongoing commentary that followed it caused her real sadness. She did not, however, give up on the possibility of repair. According to senior aides who worked with her during the final years of her reign, the Queen made several discreet attempts to create conditions in which the relationship might begin to mend. These were not grand gestures or formal overtures. They were quiet and considered, in keeping with her character. She expressed through private channels a willingness to revisit elements of the arrangement that governed Sussex's position, if doing so might bring Harry back into a closer relationship with the family. At the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June 2022, which marked the Queen's 70 years on the throne, Harry and Meghan were invited to attend. Their participation was carefully managed. They were not placed on the Buckingham Palace balcony alongside the working royals for the principal moments of the celebration. A decision that reflected the formal boundary around their status. But they were present, and they were included in other aspects of the events. Those who understood the significance of the Queen's choices during this period noted that she had instructed her household to make their attendance as straightforward as possible. It was interpreted by those around her as an attempt to leave a door open. The response was, at best, partial. Harry and Meghan attended some of the events associated with the Jubilee, but kept their participation limited. They maintained their public profile through their own channels and did not signal any broader shift in their position. Shortly after returning to the United States, the trajectory of their public commentary continued unchanged. For the Queen, each moment that might have served as a turning point instead produced another headline that reopened the wound. Palace insiders who spoke about this period describe an exhausting cycle in which private hopes for reconciliation were repeatedly undercut by public statements or media projects that made healing more difficult. The Queen was aging, carrying a full schedule of public engagements while managing, in private, the ongoing and unresolved tension within her family. It was during this period, according to those familiar with her estate planning, that she made the decision to include the sealed clause in her personal will. She did not do so in anger. Those who describe the decision characterize it as deliberate and measured, a recognition that hope alone was not sufficient, and that some provision needed to exist for a situation in which things deteriorated beyond the point of private management. She chose Princess Anne to hold the clause and to be the person who would decide if and when it should be opened. The choice was not random. Anne had served the crown her entire adult life with consistency and without controversy. She was not easily influenced by sentiment, and she was deeply familiar with what the institution required to function. The Queen trusted her not only to keep the documents safe, but to exercise the judgment necessary to know when the threshold had been crossed. At the time the clause was written, it remained a precaution. The Queen still hoped the situation would improve, that Harry would find his way back toward the family, and that the damage already done might gradually begin to heal. She did not want the clause to be used, but she was realistic enough to understand that wanting something and being able to guarantee it were two very different things. And so she prepared for the possibility that her hope would not be enough, and she placed the means to respond in the hands of the person she trusted most to use it wisely. If the Queen had hoped that time and distance would soften the situation, what unfolded in the months and years after Harry and Meghan's departure made that outcome increasingly difficult to imagine. The couple had left the royal family, but they had not left the public conversation. If anything, their voices grew louder, their platform expanded, and the details they chose to share about their time within the institution became progressively more damaging to the family they had walked away from. The moment that changed the nature of the conflict most dramatically came in March 2021. Prince Harry and Meghan sat down with the American television presenter Oprah Winfrey for a 2-hour interview that was broadcast globally. The interview had been anticipated, but nothing in the weeks of speculation leading up to it had fully prepared either the public or the palace for what the couple said when the cameras were rolling. Meghan spoke about her experience inside the royal institution with a directness that caught many people off guard. She described feeling isolated and unsupported during the period following her marriage to Harry in 2018. She said that at the lowest point of her time as a working royal, she had experienced thoughts of suicide, and that when she sought help from the institution, she was told that there was no support available because it would not look good for the family publicly. The claim was stark and serious, and it landed with enormous force in a media environment that had, in the years prior, become increasingly attentive to conversations about mental health. She also raised the subject of race. Without naming a specific individual, Meghan said that during her pregnancy with Archie, there had been conversations within the royal family about concerns over how dark the child's skin might be. The allegation was explosive. It introduced the subject of race into a debate about the monarchy that had previously been framed largely in terms of tradition and institutional resistance to change. The implication that those concerns had influenced decisions about Archie's future, including whether he would receive a security detail or be given a title, shifted the entire tone of public discussion about Sussex's departure. Harry added his own account of life within the institution. He said he had felt trapped and that there had been no genuine pathway available to him to raise concerns or seek a different arrangement from within the system. He said his father, then Prince Charles, had at a certain point stopped taking his calls. He described the relationship between the palace and the British press as a destructive and mutually beneficial arrangement that had operated at the expense of his wife and his family. He confirmed that the couple had been financially cut off after stepping back from royal duties, and that this had left them in a vulnerable position before they were able to establish independent income. The palace's response when it came was brief and careful. A short statement acknowledged that the issues raised, particularly those relating to race, were concerning and would be addressed privately. It also included the line that recollections may vary, a phrase that was immediately read as a polite but firm challenge to the accuracy of some of what the couple had said. Beyond that, there was silence. no senior royal gave an interview in response. No detailed rebuttal was issued. The institution closed ranks and said as little as possible. Inside the palace, however, the reaction was far from calm. Staff and senior aides who have since spoken about that period describe a household in a state of significant distress. The Oprah interview had not simply renewed the controversy surrounding Sussex's departure. It had recast the monarchy itself as an institution with serious questions to answer about race, mental health, and the treatment of family members. Questions that the palace had no straightforward way to address publicly without either confirming or denying. Claims it had chosen not to engage with directly. For Queen Elizabeth, the interview represented a significant escalation. Those familiar with her thinking during this period say she viewed it not simply as a personal hurt, but as a development that pushed the situation closer to the boundary she had privately drawn. The sealed clause she had left with Princess Anne was not yet something she considered activating, but the Oprah interview moved it from a distant contingency to a possibility she could no longer entirely set aside. Rather than stepping back from public commentary after the interview, Harry and Meghan maintained their presence in the media landscape. The couple continued to make appearances, give interviews, and develop content through the commercial partnerships they had established. Each new project extended the story and kept the spotlight on their version of events. Then, in December 2022, Netflix released a 6-part documentary series simply titled Harry and Meghan. The timing was significant. Queen Elizabeth had died in September of that year, and the world was still in the early stages of adjusting to the reality of King Charles III on the throne. The documentary arrived just weeks after the Queen's funeral, at a moment when the royal family was navigating both private grief and the considerable public and institutional responsibilities associated with a change of reign. The series offered an extensive account of the couple's relationship, their time as working royals, and the events surrounding their departure. It contained footage and commentary that once again placed the institution in an unflattering light. Harry described palace aides as having actively worked against them. Meghan spoke about being, in her words, fed to the wolves by an institution that prioritized its own public image over the well-being of its members. The documentary positioned the royal household not as a victim of the couple's departure, but as a participant in the conditions that made that departure inevitable. Critics, including a number of commentators who had previously been sympathetic to the couple's position, questioned the timing. The argument was made, and made loudly in significant sections of both the British and American press, that releasing the series in the immediate aftermath of the Queen's death and during the early weeks of a new reign showed poor judgment at best and deliberate provocation at worst. The royal family did not respond publicly. The decision was made, as it had been after the Oprah interview, to say nothing and to allow the storm to pass. It did not pass quickly. And before the conversation around the documentary had fully settled, something more personal arrived. In January 2023, Harry published a memoir titled Spare. The book was written in the first person and covered his life from childhood through to the present day. It was candid in a way that royal memoirs, to the extent that such a thing had previously existed, had never been. And it caused damage that those within the palace described as deep and lasting. Among the most discussed passages was Harry's account of a physical confrontation with his brother, Prince William. Harry wrote that during an argument in which William had been critical of Meghan, his brother had grabbed him by the collar and pushed him to the ground, resulting in visible injuries to Harry's back. The claim was specific, detailed, and attributed directly to a named member of the royal family. William's office did not confirm the account. No public response was issued. But the allegation placed into print what had previously only been rumoured, that the relationship between the Charles, two brothers, had deteriorated into something far more serious than a family disagreement. Harry also wrote at length about his father. He described King Charles as emotionally distant, a man more comfortable with protocol than with the kind of direct personal connection that Harry said he had needed at various points in his life. The portrait was not entirely without warmth, but it was critical in ways that those close to the king found difficult and unnecessary. The passages about Queen Camilla attracted particular attention. Harry wrote about her in terms that were sharp and unsparing. He suggested that she had cultivated relationships with the British press in a calculated way, and that stories damaging to others within the family had, in his view, been placed in the media with her knowledge as part of a strategy to improve her own public standing. The palace did not respond to these claims either, but sources close to the royal household described the reaction inside it as one of considerable anger, managed carefully and not allowed to surface publicly. The book's release extended the conversation that the documentary had restarted and added new detail to allegations that had, until that point, been made in general terms. It gave journalists, commentators, and the public specific incidents to examine and debate, and it did so at a moment when King Charles was still in the early stages of his reign, still trying to establish the tone and direction of a monarchy without its longest-serving figurehead. Princess Anne, who had by this point been holding the sealed clause for some time, was said by sources close to her to have been watching these developments with increasing concern. She had not spoken publicly about any of it. Her public appearances gave no indication of her private views. But those who know her well describe a woman who was processing each development carefully and who was keeping track of whether the line her mother had described was being approached. Then, in early 2024, something shifted the situation in a new direction. Harry launched a legal claim against the British government relating to the removal of his police protection detail following his departure from royal duties. The case itself was a matter of public record and was being handled through the courts. But in the context of everything that had preceded it, it carried an additional weight. It was no longer simply a former working royal making public statements. It was a formal legal challenge that implicated the British state and, by association, the institution of the monarchy. In interviews relating to the case, Harry made claims that went beyond the specific legal question of security provision. He suggested that his protection had been removed as a form of pressure, a means of forcing him and Meghan to return to the United Kingdom and to the conditions of royal life they had chosen to leave. The allegation was serious and specific. It suggested that decisions affecting the physical safety of his family had been used as leverage against him. For Princess Anne, this represented something qualitatively different from the interviews and the book and the documentary. Those had been damaging. This was a claim that the institution had acted not just coldly or indifferently, but in a way that was deliberately coercive. It was the kind of accusation that could not simply be absorbed and waited out. And it was at this point, according to those familiar with her thinking, that Anne concluded the threshold her mother had described had been reached. The clause her mother had left in her care was no longer a precaution held in reserve. It was, she determined, something that now needed to be used. There are decisions that take years to arrive at and only moments to execute. For Princess Anne, the decision to open the sealed clause left in her care by Queen Elizabeth II had been building through years of watching, waiting, and carefully weighing whether the moment had come. When she concluded that it had, she moved with the kind of deliberate calm that has defined her public life for decades. She contacted the relevant members of the family and convened the meeting that sources have since described as one of the most consequential private gatherings the royal family has held in recent memory. The meeting itself, as has already been established, was not announced. It was not photographed. It was not confirmed by any official spokesperson for the palace or for the Sussex household. What is known about it comes from individuals who were either present or who were briefed by those who were. And those accounts, while not identical in every detail, are consistent in their broad outline. Something significant happened inside that room. The people who were there left it changed, and the effects of what was read aloud within it are still working their way through the family and through the public conversation surrounding it, Princess. Anne opened the proceedings by making clear the basis on which the meeting had been called. She was not, she told those present, acting on her own initiative or at the direction of any living member of the family. She was fulfilling a specific instruction left to her by Queen Elizabeth II, one that carried its own conditions and its own authority. The clause had been entrusted to her with the understanding that she alone would determine when the time had come to use it, and she had determined that the time had now come. The clause, as read aloud by Anne in its entirety, addressed the institutional and financial connections that had remained, in various forms, between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the British royal estate following their departure from royal duties in 2020. Despite the formal terms of that departure, certain ties had persisted. The Arkowell Foundation, the charitable organisation established by Harry and Meghan in the United States, had continued to draw on associations with the couple's royal background. their public profiles, their access to certain networks and partnerships that had their roots in their time as working royals, and the broader credibility that came with being a senior member of the royal family, even a former one, had remained part of the foundation's identity and operational strength. The clause addressed all of this directly. It stated that should Harry and Meghan's actions ever be deemed to have placed the stability or reputation of the monarchy under serious threat, all royal-endorsed privileges and institutional connections that remained available to them or to their foundation were to be formally revoked. The Arkwell Foundation would not be shut down. It would continue to exist as an independent organization registered in the United States. But its connection to the royal estate, its ability to present itself as a continuation of work begun under royal patronage, and its access to networks and partnerships that had any formal or informal link to the crown would be severed immediately and completely. The Queen had been specific in her language. The clause did not leave room for negotiation or for a phased transition. It was a clean and enforceable line, and it had been drawn not by the current family members sitting in that room, but by the woman who had founded the modern framework of the monarchy's public role and who had spent 70 years managing its reputation with extraordinary care. The reading took several minutes. Those present listened without interruption, at least initially. Sources describe an atmosphere of considerable tension in the room as the full implications of what was being read became apparent. King Charles sat quietly. Queen Camilla maintained a composed expression throughout, though witnesses have described her demeanour in those moments differently, some characterising it as simply still, others interpreting it as something closer to satisfaction. Prince William, seated across from his brother, reportedly kept his eyes down during much of the reading and did not look directly at Harry. Harry's reaction when it came was not quiet. According to multiple accounts, he rose from his seat before the reading had concluded. He spoke loudly and with evident anger, disputing the validity of what was being presented and questioning the legal standing of a clause drafted under such circumstances. He suggested that the meeting had been arranged not as a neutral fulfillment of his grandmother's wishes, but as a coordinated move by the family to strip him and Meghan of what remained of their connection to an institution they had sacrificed significantly to be part of. He reportedly accused those present of having known in advance what the clause contained and of having choreographed the gathering accordingly. Princess Anne responded without raising her voice. She reiterated what she had said at the outset. She was not acting on behalf of King Charles or Prince William or anyone else in the room. She was acting on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II, in accordance with an instruction that had been prepared years earlier and left in her custody for precisely this kind of circumstance. The clause had not been drafted in response to any single event. It had been conceived as a long-term safeguard, and the conditions under which it was to be activated had, in Anne's judgment, been clearly and unambiguously met. Meghan, throughout much of this exchange, remained seated. She had become visibly upset during the reading itself, and as Harry's confrontation with Anne escalated, her distress was apparent to everyone in the room. She did not speak at length, but those present noted that her composure had broken in a way that was difficult to watch, regardless of one's position on the wider dispute. The meeting concluded without resolution in any conventional sense. There was no agreement reached, no statement drafted jointly, no handshake or moment of mutual acknowledgement. Harry and Meghan left the premises in a state of considerable distress. Security personnel had been called in during the final and most heated moments of the gathering, and both the Duke and Duchess were escorted from the building by staff. The departure was not calm and it was not quiet, and for those who witnessed it, it marked the end of something that had been deteriorating for a long time. In the days and weeks that followed, the palace maintained its policy of public silence. No statement was issued, no briefing was given to the press, no senior royal gave any interview that touched on what had happened. The institution chose, as it has consistently chosen throughout this long and difficult episode, to say nothing and to allow events to speak for themselves. The Sussex household also went quiet. In the immediate aftermath of the meeting, there were no public appearances, no social media posts of the kind the couple had used regularly to communicate with their audience, and no statements from their representatives that acknowledged or addressed what had taken place. The silence from both sides created a vacuum that speculation quickly filled. What has emerged in that space is a conversation about what happens next, and it is a conversation that those who follow the royal family closely are approaching with considerable caution. The history of this particular dispute has not been kind to confident predictions. Every development that appeared to signal a turning point has been followed sooner or later by something that complicated or reversed it. There have been suggestions, reported by several outlets including the BBC, that Harry has made contact with King Charles and Prince William through informal channels in the period following the meeting. These reports have not been confirmed by any official source on either side. If they are accurate, they would represent a significant shift in a dynamic that has been characterized for years by distance and, at times, open hostility. Those who have reported on these contacts describe them as tentative and early, not a reconciliation, but a possible first step toward one. The motivation for any such outreach, if it has occurred, is a matter of debate among those who follow these developments. Some analysts suggest that the loss of the institutional connections described in the sealed clause would have a meaningful practical impact on the Archewell Foundation's ability to operate and fundraise at the level it has become accustomed to. The Foundation's credibility in certain circles has rested, at least in part, on its founder's royal identity. If that connection is formally and publicly severed, the landscape in which the Foundation operates changes. Others take a different view. They argue that Harry's reported overtures toward his father and brother reflect something more personal than strategic calculation, that the experience of sitting in that room and hearing his grandmother's words read aloud brought him face to face with the consequences of choices made over several years in a way that no amount of external commentary had managed to do. Grief, it has been observed by those who study these dynamics, often resurfaces unexpectedly. The death of a parent or grandparent can reopen questions that a person believed they had settled. Whether this moment represents a genuine turning point or simply a pause in a continuing conflict is something that cannot be known with certainty at this stage. The pattern of the past several years offers reasons to be cautious about optimism. There have been other moments that appeared to offer an opening: the Platinum Jubilee, the period immediately following the Queen's death, the early months of King Charles's reign, and none of them produced a lasting change in the direction of the relationship. What is different now is that a formal and enforceable line has been drawn, not by the current family members who are party to the dispute, but by the woman whose authority none of them has ever publicly questioned. Queen Elizabeth II spent the final years of her life hoping that the situation would resolve itself through goodwill and time. When she concluded that hope alone might not be sufficient, she took steps to ensure that something more durable existed. The sealed clause was that something. Its activation does not end the story. It may, in fact, be the beginning of a new and equally complicated chapter. Harry and Meghan retain their titles, their home in California, their foundation, and their right to speak publicly about their experiences. The clause removes certain institutional connections. It does not remove their voice or their platform. What it does, perhaps most significantly, is draw a clear and documented line between their life as it is now and their life as it was when they were working members of the royal family. A line that the Queen herself drew, in her own words, before she died. For the millions of people who have followed this story since it began in January 2020, the question of where it goes from here remains genuinely open. The royal family is not static. Its relationships, its internal dynamics, and its relationship with the public have all shifted enormously over the past 5 years alone. The possibility that Harry and the wider family might one day find a way towards something more settled is not something that any honest observer would completely rule out. But that possibility now exists within a framework that has changed. The Queen's final instruction has been carried out. Princess Anne fulfilled the duty entrusted to her, and whatever comes next will unfold against the backdrop of that moment in a room that the public never saw, where words written years ago by a woman who is no longer alive landed with enough force to leave everyone present shaken, and to raise questions about the future of one of the world's most scrutinized families that nobody at this point can fully answer.